You ignore the small things first. That's how it always starts. The voicemail that's a little too warm. The handwriting on a birthday card that arrives in October when your birthday is in March. The phone call from a son who hasn't asked how you're doing in 11 months, suddenly asking what your weekend looks like. I ignored all of it. My name is Calvin Whitfield. I'm 67 years old, a retired structural engineer, and a widower for almost 3 years now. My wife Rosalind died of a stroke on a Tuesday morning while I was in the kitchen making her coffee the way she liked it. 2 sugars and a splash of cream, so faint it barely changed the color. I heard her fall in the upstairs hallway. By the time I got to her, she was still breathing, but her eyes already had that distance in them that I seen in only one other person, my own father, and only once. The reason I'm telling you this is because what happened to me almost 6 months ago wouldn't have happened if Rosalind were still alive. She read people the way I read load-bearing diagrams. She would have known. She would have looked at our son once across the dinner table and said, "Cal, something's wrong with him." And I would have listened, because I always listened to her, even when I didn't want to. But she wasn't there, so I had to learn the hard way. It started with a phone call on a Thursday in late spring. I was out in the garage finishing a birdhouse for the maple tree in the backyard. The same maple Rosalind planted the year we moved into this house in 1986. The phone rang inside, and I almost let it go. I'm slow getting to the phone these days, and most calls are robocalls about extended warranties on cars I no longer own. But I went in. I picked up. And it was my son. "Dad," he said, in this bright voice I hadn't heard from him in years. "How you holding up?" His name is Travis. He's 38, my only child, and the last time I'd spoken to him properly was at Rosalind's funeral, where he stood by the casket for about 4 minutes and then spent the rest of the wake on his phone in the parking lot. He'd called maybe 6 or 7 times since then, mostly short, mostly to ask if I'd thought any more about downsizing. That was always the phrase. Downsizing. Like Rosalind's whole life in this house was just clutter. But this time, his voice was different. Soft, almost tender. He asked about my back. He asked about the garden. He asked if I was sleeping all right. I remember standing there in the kitchen with the phone pressed to my ear, looking out the window at the maple tree and feeling this strange warmth bloom in my chest, the kind of feeling I hadn't let myself have in a long time. My boy is calling because he's worried about me. That's the moment I should have known. That warmth, that easy pull of hope, was the thing he was counting on. He told me he and his wife wanted to take me out the following Saturday. Not just lunch. Something nicer. He said they'd been thinking about how hard the last few years had been on me, and they wanted to do something special. A whole afternoon. He said they'd booked a private consultation at a place called Meridian Estate Services, which he described as kind of like a one-stop concierge for retirement folks. He said they had a tea room, a chef, a wellness specialist on staff. He said they had everything. "Just come hang out with us, Dad. We just want to spend the day with you." I said yes. Of course I said yes. I thanked him. I think I even said something stupid like, "Your mother would be so happy." And he was quiet for a second on the other end, and then he said, Yeah, she would. I should have heard the lie in that pause. But I didn't. Travis's wife is named Bridget. She's a real estate attorney. She and Travis have been married for 9 years, and they don't have children, which used to bother Rosalind more than she admitted. Bridget is the kind of woman who shakes your hand a half-second too long, who remembers details about your life with a precision that always felt slightly clinical to me, like she was filing them somewhere. She wore a black suit to Rosalind's funeral. Not navy, not charcoal. Black, with a brooch shaped like a bee. I remember Rosalind whispering to me in our wedding rehearsal dinner, "Cal, that woman is going to be a problem someday." And I'd laughed and said, "She's just ambitious." And Rosalind had given me a look I now recognize as her real flag look, the one she gave the contractor who tried to upcharge us on the kitchen remodel in 2003. The Saturday came. Bright morning, no clouds. Travis pulled into my driveway in a black SUV I didn't recognize, least probably, and Bridget Tay was in the passenger seat in a cream-colored dress. They both got out and hugged me at the same time, which has never been their style. Travis said I looked good. Bridget said the house looked beautiful. I noticed she was looking past me as she said it, scanning the entryway, the staircase, the framed photo of Rosalind on the side table. Her eyes lingered on the photo a little too long. We drove about 40 minutes north into the hills, into a quiet little development I'd never heard of. The kind of place with a gatehouse and a stone wall covered in ivy. Meridian Estate Services was a converted Tudor home, beautifully maintained, with a circular drive and white hydrangeas and iron planters. The whole place smelled like lavender from the moment we stepped out of the car. A young woman in a blazer met us at the door. Her name was Pierce, she said, just Pierce. She was maybe 26, with red hair pulled back in a low knot and a small silver necklace shaped like a key. She greeted Travis and Bridget like she already knew them. By name, by first name. Travis brushed past it. Bridget didn't react at all. But I caught it. The recognition, the familiarity. Travis had said this was a consultation. A consultation, in my book, means it's the first meeting. They had been there before. That was the first stone in my shoe. I told myself I was being paranoid. I told myself maybe they'd come to scope it out for me, to make sure it was nice. I told myself a lot of things in those first 10 minutes that were lies I built to keep the warmth in my chest from going cold. Pierce led us into a sitting room with 2 leather wing chairs and a settee. There was a tray with cucumber water and 3 crystal glasses. She sat us down and said the wellness specialist would be with me shortly for the orientation. Travis and Bridget excused themselves to step outside and let me have a moment. Bridget squeezed my shoulder as she left. The squeeze was firm, almost a press. I sat there alone for maybe 4 minutes, and in those 4 minutes I started to look around. I'm an engineer. My eyes do this on their own. I noticed there was a small camera in the upper corner above the doorway. I noticed the side table next to my chair had a stack of papers under a leather portfolio, and the corner of the top page read, in faint blue type, Power of Attorney. Durable. I noticed there were 2 pens already laid out. 2, not 1. 2 pens, both uncapped. The warmth in my chest had gone now, replaced with something else. A cold, tight thing in the back of my throat. I got up. I walked over to the window. I pretended to look at the hydrangeas. From the side window I could see the parking area. Travis and Bridget were standing by the SUV, very close, and Bridget was speaking quickly, her hands cutting the air. Travis was nodding. Then Bridget glanced toward the house, and I stepped back from the window before her eyes could find me. That was when Pierce came back. "Mr. Beat-it, Whitfield," she said, "could you come this way? Just for a quick step. The notary needs to verify your ID before we sit down for the welcome session." A notary. I'm 67 years old. I have lived through 3 real estate transactions, a refinance, the probate of my parents' estate, and the long, ugly paperwork after Rosalind died. I know what a notary is for. A notary doesn't verify ID for a welcome session. A notary witnesses the signing of a legally binding document. I nodded. I smiled. I said, "Of course," because I needed time. I followed Pierce down a paneled hallway. Halfway down, she paused at a side door, and she looked at me. Really looked at me. Her face changed. It dropped the pleasant mask. Her eyes were hard, scared, and very young. "Sir," she said very quietly, "don't sign anything. Anything they put in front of you. Don't sign your name, don't even initial." I stared at her. "Pretend you need to use the restroom," she said. "It's the second door on the left. There's a back exit through the kitchen. The catering door on the left. There's a back exit through the kitchen. The catering door. It opens onto the side garden. Walk straight to the road. Do you understand me?" I nodded. I couldn't make my mouth work. "Don't tell them I said anything, please." She stepped back into her professional posture. Her face went bright again. She said in a normal voice, "It's just down here, Mr. Bate, Whitfield. The notary's office is right at the end." "Thank you," I said. My voice came out thin. Actually, would you mind? I think I need the men's room first. The drive up here was long. Of course, she said. Second door on the left. I'll let them know. I walked. I did not look back. I did not let my legs hurry. My heart was hammering in my chest in a way I hadn't felt since my stress test in 2019. I passed the bathroom door. I kept going. The hallway opened into a kitchen. A real working kitchen with stainless steel and a chef's hat hanging on a hook. And there, just like she'd said, was a door at the back. White, with a small frosted glass window. I pushed it open. The morning hit me. Birds, wet grass, the smell of mulch. I stepped out, closed the door behind me, and walked, not ran, walked across the side lawn, through a hedge gap, and onto the gravel shoulder of the road. My phone was in my jacket pocket. My car keys were not, because Travis had driven. My wallet was. So was my old habit, an old habit Rosalind always teased me about, of carrying a folded 20 in my breast pocket, for emergencies. I walked half a mile down the road before I let myself stop. Then I called a taxi, the local company, the one that still has a real human dispatcher, the one Rosalind used to use to get to her hair appointments after she stopped driving at night. I sat on a low stone wall under an oak tree and waited. I didn't text Travis. I didn't text Bridget. I turned my phone to silent and watched the road. The taxi came in 22 minutes. I had the driver, a quiet, older man with a Vietnam veteran cap, take me straight home. I paid him in cash from my breast pocket. He asked if I was all right. I said, I will be. I let myself into my house. I locked the door. I drew the curtains in the front room. And then I sat down on the couch where Rosalind used to read in the evenings, and I put my hands on my knees and I shook. For maybe 10 minutes I just shook. Then I got up, because Rosalind's voice was in my head saying, Cal, what are the next 3 things? That's how she always was. 3 things. Always 3. The first thing was the basement. Rosalind kept what she called her important box in a fireproof safe in the basement, behind the workbench. After she died, I'd opened it once, just to check, and I'd seen the deed to the house, our wills, her jewelry appraisals, and a thick manila envelope marked for Hey Al, only open if. I had not opened that envelope. I had told myself I wasn't ready. The truth is, I was scared of what was in there, because Rosalind didn't write things like that on envelopes for no reason. I went down the basement stairs. My knees were not happy about it. I opened the safe. The envelope was right where I'd left it. I took it upstairs. I made myself a cup of tea. I sat at the kitchen table, and I opened it. Inside were 3 things. The first was a handwritten letter from Rosalind, dated about 4 months before she died. The second was a folder of bank statements and account printouts, with sticky notes in her handwriting. The third was a USB drive, taped to a piece of cardboard, with the words Travis Pattern written on it in her hand. I read the letter first. I'm going to tell you what was in it, because by the time you finish hearing this story, you'll understand why I'm telling you. She wrote that she had been suspicious of Travis for almost 2 years. That money had been disappearing from a small joint investment account that she and I had set up for him as a teenager and never closed, an account he had access to. That small charges had appeared on her own credit card after holiday visits. 20 here, 80 there. Never enough that I would notice, but Rosalind tracked every penny. She wrote that she had begun to keep records, that she was not yet ready to confront him because she wanted to be sure. But the part that broke me wasn't that. The part that broke me was the last paragraph. She wrote, Cal, my love, if you are reading this, I'm not there to handle it. So I need you to handle it for both of us. He is our son, and he is also a man who has done things I could not look at without my heart breaking. Don't punish him with hate, but don't protect him with money. If he comes to you with something that feels too sweet, walk away. Promise me you'll walk away. I love you. I love him. But we cannot save him from himself. I put the letter down. I took my glasses off. I put my face in my hands, and I cried in a way I haven't cried since the morning she died. Not because I was angry. I wasn't angry yet. I was just bone-deep grieving. Because I realized she had known, and she'd carried it alone, because she didn't want me to have to carry it while she was sick. The folder of bank statements was extensive. Rosalind had highlighted withdrawals, dates, amounts. She had noted the times Travis had visited and what had gone missing afterward. She had even photocopied a check he'd written to himself, out of an account she had not authorized him to use. The signature on the check was her own. Forged. Not even well. Then I plugged in the USB drive. It was email screenshots, 23 of them, emails between Travis and someone else, someone with a Gmail address that was just a string of letters and numbers. The emails were old, from when Rosalind was alive. They discussed Mom and Dad's situation. They discussed the right time. They discussed something called the Meridian Arrangement, and a contact named only as P. Other emails referenced Bridget. One email, dated 2 months before Rosalind's stroke, said in plain words, "Once she's out of the picture, the old man won't put up resistance. He's sentimental and slow." Bridget has the durable POA template ready. I read that line 3 times. Once she's out of the picture. My hand started shaking again, but it wasn't grief this time. It wasn't even anger, not yet. It was something colder. The kind of cold I felt when I would inspect a building and find a structural beam that had been compromised on purpose. Sabotage. Calculated. I sat at that kitchen table for a long time. The tea went cold. The light in the windows turned from morning to afternoon. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I looked. 17 missed calls from Travis. 11 from Bridget. 3 voicemails. I didn't listen to them. I called my lawyer instead. His name is Whit Bardsley. He's been my attorney since 1991. He does estates and trusts, and he and Rosalind got along like old college roommates even though they'd only met a dozen times. I called his cell on a Saturday afternoon, and he picked up on the second ring. "Cal," he said. "How are you?" I said. "Whit, I'm in trouble." He didn't ask me to slow down. He didn't ask me to make an appointment. He said, "Are you safe right now?" "I'm in my house." "Are the doors locked?" "Yes." "Stay there. I'll be there in an hour." He came in 53 minutes. I let him in. I made fresh coffee. He sat at the kitchen table, and I laid out the letter, the bank statements, the USB drive. He read for 40 minutes without saying a word. He didn't even drink the coffee. When he finished, he took off his reading glasses and rubbed his eyes, and he said, "Cal, I have to ask you a hard question. Are you prepared to do this the right way? Because the right way isn't going to be quick, and it isn't going to feel good." "I'm prepared," I said. He nodded. He told me what we were going to do. We were going to freeze every account Travis had any access to. We were going to revoke any document that gave him or Bridget any standing to act on my behalf. We are going to file a report with the state's Elder Financial Abuse Unit, because what had happened that morning at Meridian Estate Services was not a misunderstanding. It was an attempt at coerced execution of a durable power of attorney, possibly worse, and there was every reason to believe the people who ran Meridian were running it on multiple families. He also told me, very gently, that we were going to talk to the police, because forging Rosalind's signature was a felony, and the emails on that USB drive were potentially conspiracy. "Cal," he said, "I have to ask, do you want to press charges against your son?" I sat with that question for a long time. I thought about the day Travis was born. I thought about teaching him to ride a bicycle on the cul-de-sac. I thought about him at 12, crying because his hamster had died, and Rosalind holding him on her lap, even though he was almost as tall as her by then. I thought about the boy he had been, and the man he had become, and the gap between those two people, and how I had spent 30 years watching that gap widen and pretending I didn't see it. I thought about Rosalind's letter. Don't punish him with hate, but don't protect him with money. "Yes," I said. "Yes, I want to press charges, but I want to do this with my eyes open, not for revenge, for accountability." White nodded. "That's the right answer," he said, "and it's the only one I would have helped you with." The next 2 weeks were the strangest of my life. Travis called me 41 times. Bridget called me 58. They came to the house 3 times. The first time, I didn't answer the door. The second time, I told them through the door to call my attorney. The third time, Bridget stood on my front porch screaming, and I called the non-emergency police line, and a young officer came and politely walked her back to her car. That last time was the only time I spoke to Travis directly. He stood on my walkway behind Bridget, and he looked at me through the screen door, and he said, "Dad, Dad, please. We just wanted to help you. You don't understand." And I said, "Son, I understand more than you think I do, and I love you, and I'm not going to be your way out anymore." I closed the door. I want to tell you about Pierce, because she's the reason any of this happened. After I'd been working with Whit for about 10 days, I asked him if there was any way to find her, to thank her, and to make sure she was safe, because I knew what she had done was risky for her job. Whit looked into it. It turned out Pierce was an FBI cooperator. She had taken the receptionist job at Meridian 3 months earlier, as part of an investigation that had been quietly building for almost 2 years. Meridian wasn't a wellness facility. It wasn't even really an estate services company. It was a front. Adult children would bring in elderly parents under the guise of consultations or wellness days, and Meridian would walk those parents through coerced signings of durable powers of attorney, transfer on death deeds, and amended trust documents. The signed documents would then be quietly used to drain accounts, sell properties, and reroute estates. 3 families had already lost a combined $4 million before Pierce was placed inside. She had broken protocol to warn me, because she'd seen the way Travis and Bridget had spoken to her on their 2 prior visits, and because she had recognized something in my face when I sat down that morning, something that made her decide she could not let it happen to me. She told her supervising agent the same day. She was reprimanded but not fired. I wrote her a letter. Whit delivered it through her agent. I told her she had given me back the rest of my life, and I owed her something I would never be able to repay, and that if she ever needed anything in this world, my door was open. I signed it with both Rosalind's name and my own, because I knew, somehow, that Rosalind would want her name on that letter too. A few months later, Meridian was raided. 6 people were arrested, including the so-called wellness specialist and the notary, who turned out to be a disbarred attorney from another state. The story was in the regional papers for about a week. Pierce's name was never mentioned, which I was glad of. Travis and Bridget were both indicted. Bridget pled out first, as her attorneys had probably advised, and her plea included full cooperation against Travis and against the Meridian operators. She was disbarred from real estate law and sentenced to 3 years, of which she would serve probably half. Travis went to trial. The trial took 11 days. I attended every day. I sat in the second row. I never missed a session. On the 7th day, Travis testified. He did not look at me when he walked to the stand, but once he was seated, his eyes found mine, and they stayed on me for what felt like a long time. He looked older than 38. He looked like a man who had not slept in weeks. I held his gaze. I did not soften. I did not glare. I just let him see me, and I let him see that I saw him. He was convicted on 3 counts: conspiracy to commit elder financial abuse, forgery related to the check Rosalind had documented, and 1 count of grand theft related to the joint account. He was sentenced to 5.5 years. With good behavior, he could be out in about 3. I did not visit him in the first 6 months. I needed those 6 months for myself. In month 7, I drove 4 hours to the medium security facility where they were holding him, and I sat across from him at a low metal table in a long room with fluorescent lights, and I looked at my son for the first time since the trial. He was thinner. His hair was shorter. He had a small scar above his right eyebrow that I didn't recognize. His hands, on the table between us, were the same hands I'd held when he was 4 years old, and we crossed the street together to the ice cream shop on Larchmont Avenue. I said, "Travis." He said, "Dad." We sat there in silence for almost a full minute. Then I said, "I want to tell you 3 things, and then I want to listen to whatever you need to say." He nodded. The first thing I told him was that I loved him, that love was not a faucet I could turn off, and I had not turned it off, and I would not. That whatever happened in this room or in the rest of his life, the love I had for him as my son was not gone. The second thing I told him was that I would not be giving him money. Not now, not when he got out, not in my will. Whatever inheritance might have come to him would, instead, be going to a foundation in Rosalind's name that would fund legal aid for elderly people targeted by financial abuse. I told him this not as a punishment, but as a fact. I told him that his mother had asked me in writing to make this choice, and that I was honoring her. The third thing I told him was that the door of my house would always be open to him as a son, but never again as a beneficiary, that he could come, when he was free, and sit at the kitchen table with me. We could have dinner. We could talk. We could rebuild whatever was possible to rebuild between two men who had lost so much. But he could not come asking for things. Not money, not signatures, not anything that lived on paper. He didn't speak right away. When he did, his voice was very small. "I know," he said. "I know, Dad." He cried then. He cried the way he had cried at 12 years old over the hamster, and I didn't reach across the table to him because the rule of the facility didn't allow it. But I sat with him. I sat through it. I did not look away. I did not get up. When he was done, I gave him my handkerchief through the guard. He wiped his face. He gave it back. I stood up to leave. He said, "Dad." I turned. He said, "Tell me one thing about Mom. Anything. Just one thing." I thought about it. I said, She knew what was going on with you, and she still loved you every day right up until the end. Her last coherent sentence to me, the night before she died, was about you. She said, "I hope he finds his way back." He nodded. His face was wet. He didn't say anything. I left. I drove 4 hours home. I got home after dark. I sat in the kitchen, and I made myself a sandwich, and I ate it standing up, looking out at the maple tree in the backyard. The leaves were starting to turn. Rosalind always said early October was the most beautiful week of the year in our yard. She was right. That was almost 3 months ago. I'm telling you all of this because I read something a long time ago in a book Rosalind kept on her nightstand that said love without limits stops being love and becomes a kind of slow drowning for both people, for the one who keeps giving and for the one who keeps taking. I didn't understand that sentence when I first read it. I thought love was supposed to be unconditional. I thought a parent's love was supposed to absorb anything. But I think now that's a half-truth. The love can be unconditional. The actions can't. You can love a person and still refuse to be the bridge they walk over to, harm themselves and others. You can love a person and still close your wallet. You can love a person and still call the police. That's not the opposite of love. That's the deepest version of it, I know. I still have my house. The maple tree is still in the backyard. Rosalind's reading chair is still in the front room, and her books are still on her nightstand, and I haven't moved them. And I'm not going to. I've started a small habit of going into her garden in the mornings before the heat comes up, with my coffee, and just standing there. I don't always say anything. But sometimes I tell her what's going on. I told her about Pierce. I told her about Wit. I told her about the foundation we set up in her name, which has helped 6 families so far in its first year. I told her about Travis. Every time I've gone to see him, which is now once a month, if someone you trust offers you a day that sounds too good, a free trip, a free consultation, a free anything, and the person at the front desk seems to know them by name, listen to your gut. If a stranger pulls you aside and whispers, "Don't sign anything, don't argue, don't think about how rude it would be. Don't think about whether you might be misunderstanding. Get out the back door. Walk to the road. Call a taxi. Go home. Open the envelope your wife left you in the basement. Read the letter. And then call your lawyer. I'm 67 years old. I'm not going to live forever. But the time I have left is mine, and the home I built with Rosalind is ours. And no one, not a daughter-in-law in a black suit, not a son with a soft new voice on the phone, not a polished young woman named Pierce who turned out to be the angel of my life, not anyone, is going to write the ending of my story but me. I'm writing it, and Rosalind, wherever she is, she knows. I think about that morning at Meridian almost every day. Not because I'm haunted by it, but because I've finally learned to read it the way I should have read my own son for years. The signs were there. The voicemail too warm. The birthday card in October. The way Travis suddenly remembered I existed when there was something he needed. I didn't see it, because I didn't want to see it. That's the truth, and at 67 years old, I'm done lying to myself about it. What I've come to understand is that nothing in a life of any length is ever truly random. Travis didn't wake up one morning and decide to become the man who sat across from a notary in a Tudor house with a forged power of attorney in his briefcase. He drifted there, choice by choice, year by year, and every time I covered for him, every time Rosalind and I bailed him out of a bad debt or a worse decision, we paved one more inch of the road that brought him to that morning. Cause. Effect. Quietly compounding, the way interest does. I built that road. So did Rosalind, and she knew it before I did, which is why she left me that letter. The hard wisdom I've earned, and I want to be honest, it cost me almost everything to earn it, is that real love and quiet enabling can wear the same face for a long time. They look identical from the outside. The difference shows up only when something is asked of you that requires a spine. Writing a check is easy. Saying no to your only child is not. Walking out the back door of a building when your son is waiting in the parking lot is not. Sitting in a courtroom for 11 days and watching him be led away in cuffs is not. But that, I've come to believe, is what character actually is. Character isn't what you do when life is generous to you. It's what you do when love and integrity are pulling you in opposite directions. And you have to choose integrity. And you have to keep choosing it the next morning, and the morning after that. If I could say one thing to anyone listening who's my age and feels alone and feels tired, it would be this. Trust the small voice in your chest that whispers something is wrong. That voice is not paranoia. It is the accumulated wisdom of every year you have lived, trying to protect you, sharpen your mind, even when the people around you would prefer you dull. Build your strength, even when it's easier to give in. And love the people in your life with both arms open and both eyes wide. Because the day you stop seeing them clearly is the day you stop being able to help them at all. I'm still here. I'm still standing, and so are you.